Alright. What's going on, you good people? It's your boy 360 Stacks in this thing, baby, representing TKOG. Oh, bruh. I ain't gonna lie. This deck's nice, bruh. I ain't gonna lie. Look, let's talk about it. Can we talk about it? Let's talk about it. You know what? Before we even get started, definitely subscribe. Subscribe, it's absolutely free. Help your boy eat. Join the Patreon, join the Discord. I just got approved for all 3 of my tiers on YouTube channel memberships, so I need one more email to get back from them, and then I'll have freaking YouTube channel memberships, which I've never had before. I've never been able to. I've never even fathomed this because, you know, it's just something that I don't know why I didn't see myself having it, but yeah, like I qualified for it, so that's a blessing. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the rEsCuE aCe deck. Dude, I was sitting here thinking of all the possibilities because of things that we're going to discuss, and I didn't even get to all of it. Yeah, I didn't even get to all of it, which is just freaking crazy. Actually, yeah, I never thought about doing that. That's pretty sick. I just thought of a combo I literally just thought of a combo in my head right now while I was sitting here thinking of all the possibilities. I think that's about it, yeah. Brennan and High Spirits. That's gas. Alright, so I think that's gonna cover it. Alright. So I was thinking about the rEsCuE aCe deck and how it took the meta by storm, and then I thought to myself, why is this deck so good? Because when I first looked at the archetype, I said, this looks like a really good value engine. It's giving me mad Plunder Patrol vibes. I feel like this is something that I can see myself playing. But also at the same time, you know, it was before the new support came out, and I knew it wasn't going to be a pure build. I knew it was going to be a hybrid variant. So it was going to be like a Spriggans, Therion build, you know, and those two archetypes already had like synergy amongst each other. And the new cards came out, and it just got crazy because, like, then I got decision anxiety, and I wasn't sure of how to build my rEsCuE aCe deck. And it's just really, that's one of the things, I think that's one of the biggest strengths of the deck. Like, one of the qualities that not a lot of decks have is that there's so many ways to play it. And you can literally build the deck the same exact way and still play it like 7 different ways, because a lot of how the combos can be integrated, it comes purely from the extra deck. So one of the biggest strengths that I think this deck has right off the bat that I'm going to point out that a lot of decks don't have is that you can play different variants without playing different cards, and you also don't really have to incorporate bricks into your main deck to get a variety and diversity of your inboards. It depends, but a lot of engines that this deck is able to incorporate purely do come from the extra deck. So already that's a strength that a lot of decks don't have, because there's a certain trajectory or like a certain line of play that will give you coverage in a certain matchup, and not every deck is able to deviate that way without like incorporating a buttload of bricks that like you won't like drawing. So already off the bat, I feel like this deck has that going for it. On top of it, topping multiple high caliber events, winning OICS, being a really, really funny looking deck, and I like the artwork. I think it's so cool. I think the deck is really consistent, but also at the same time, it's super ironic for you to have 3 Hydrants, if you play 3 Airlifters, which is 6 starters already, 3 Emergencies, which is 9 starters, 3 Diabellstar the Black Witch, which is 12, if you're maxing out, 1 Snake Eye, which is 13, 3 The Sinful Spoils, which is 16, your Durindal, which is 17, your Rhoda, which is 18, your 1-for-1, which is 19. Not saying you'll play all these, just how many you can max out. And then your Prosperity, which would be 22. You could potentially max out on 22 consistency cards, but then the deck like bricks like crazy. I don't get it. It's super funny and ironic though. So I think this is like these cards right here initially for me are what make the deck so good, because it's the variety, right? It's all these different hybrid variants and all these culminations of cards that really do kind of bolster the deck's defenses, its coverage, and also its diverse inboards. Because like Turbulence setting 4 wasn't really going to be any deck by itself. It's strong, it's 3 interruptions, it's solid, But like before the new support and before this deck got a huge boost in consistency, like set 4 was the first thing that all of us thought of when we saw this deck. We were like, oh, it's Turbulence Turbo. Oh, the deck loses to 1 interruption because your opponent's just going to hold their hand trap for Turbulence. And then like now, it's just not like that at all. The deck's resilient. It has a lot of good recuperation. It's got good recovery and follow-up. It's pretty good and efficient at playing through multiple hand traps, multiple disruptions, multiple spot removals. Even if you play Keep Away on Hydrant, it always finds a way to get back to Hydrant. It's able to dodge targeting effects. It has a really dope hand trap. I know there's like a consensus on Impulse, like 1, 3, or none. I personally believe that like there's a lot of value in this card, especially when you're playing through disruptions going second, so that you can be able to access Hydrant more efficiently, and also to be able to play through those spot removals and play through those hand traps and negations, and like just overall giving you a better matchup against like everything. Really, for me, it's just insane. So yeah, the deck just has so many tools, and it has a high level of utility. It's got great value in its engine, and honestly, I think those are a myriad of reasons why this deck's so good. And then the fact that if we stem down into like the extra deck cards, this is where you really start to see how good this deck is, because there are so many different combos that can all spawn off of Airlifter plus a rEsCuE or just Airlifter by herself. And you do have like the newest techs, that have been incorporated into the deck. Like you have the Puzzlemino line that can get you consistent access into Flame Banshee, which in turn grabs you Flag, which grabs you Nemesis, Escados, which again you can just summon Reaper-Dacus, target Escados, call any type in the game, and lock the match out up. So like if you're playing against Tyr, you can call, you know what I mean? Like it's just crazy. Like you can call he's already a dragon, so like he already slays Dragon Link. If you're playing mirror match, like you can call like Machine or Warrior. It's crazy that you can call any type and lock any deck out. It's really interesting. So it has a really solid Pearly matchup. It has, like, going first, it has a really solid matchup all around, like all across the board. Not just because of like the Escados line, which like is a full lock and doesn't lose to board breakers at all, which is kind of one of the most broken lines that this deck has. But then like you have packages that haven't even been exploited yet with like Merrymaker and Sargus and like the Spriggans cards, but like these are engines that require bricks, which you don't want to play, so like you can have a higher and higher ceiling, but also at the same time like lose consistency, lose the ability to incorporate a lot more non-engine, which is another strength the deck has. Like its core engine will typically take like 22 slots or less, leaving you with 18 non-engine slots, which is a big deal. But then you also have like the Cyber's Good Stuff package, which this line can come off of just freaking Airlifter, and you can get like a soft imperm on any card and like a pseudo, spell or trap negation on top of like your 3 setups just off of Turbulence, which is pretty good to me. Like I think the deck's nifty. There's an Assault line that gets you into, I'm just gonna call this guy Rutabaga, which gets you access to Baron and a Little Knight on top of your 3 sets. So like you're always going to on multiple interruptions. You have multiple ways to play around like the biggest weakness, which is like evenly matched, Lightning Storm, anything that clears the back rows. And then on top of that, like you have like your own archetype specific cards. Like you have like an engine card that actually can like be like set for, oh, I get blown out. Nah. So I think it's a big deal. I think it's incredible, and it's so convenient that Hydrant allows you to activate any of these cards the same turn they're set, which gives you even more power in your combos, but also at the same time, it gives you a little bit of diversity going second, being that like you can actually literally pseudo hand trap your opponent with real traps. I think because they're fires, that's one strength already that gives you like so much access to a pool of cards that not other decks have. But then they don't lose to Bystials. They don't really care about their grave that much. Like you can actually play Shifter in the deck, which is crazy that you can. And like, sure, your inboards aren't going to be super absurd, but like the fact of the matter is, Shifter is a good card, and sometimes Shifter is enough. So I think it's insane that this deck can play so many powerful cards. And then not only are they fires, and not only are they machines, but they're also warriors. Like Fire Warriors is crazy, because like you have these cards, and that means like your starters are searchable by more starters, and you get more consistency. But then also because like they're machines, you get to play cards like these, the Therions, which I haven't seen anyone really on these, and I guess for good reason, because like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But like you have all these supplemental engines that are not being played right now that just can be played. I think this is one of the strongest one. I think aCe is just a crazy card, and the fact that rEsCuE even exists means like no deck is safe. Like hybrid variants I think are Gucci, but like any Cyberse deck, dead. Any Dragon deck, dead. Any Machine deck, dead. Any Warrior based deck, dead. For tiers, I think you won't have as hard of a time, but I just think there's just too much coverage off of this card. It's a beast in the mirror match. It's a beast against Pearly. It's super, super, super sane. Economically so as well, because you really don't need to go out of your way. Like you don't need to deviate that far from the your initial line to get access to a card like this. You can incorporate cards like Blaster just because they're fire. I'm not saying that these cards are good. I'm just saying like the fact that you can still do more with your rEsCuE deck than already is being done, and that just goes to show like if a Mad Lad, like me for example, was willing to take the deck all the way and utilize every single synergistic strength and beneficial capability that it has to its fullest advantage, like the deck could even potentially be better. I don't necessarily want to say that rEsCuE is solved per se, but like what I will say is that rEsCuE is in a position now where like not only is it dominating in its format, but it's able to have a contingency plan for borderline every matchup. I mean, if you call Fiend against Unchained, what exactly are they doing? Like, what is Unchained actually doing? Like, I don't know. Like, even this line is really, really strong. I think every line that the deck has is strong. Like, every single line. And they don't really take that much. It's all off of very minimal cards. And you're able to pilot this deck so efficiently through Interruption. I think the fact that it plays through so much disruption, on top of it being able to put up so many disruptions and being so resilient and just feeling like you're playing a side deck. Like your main deck is like a side deck, and that's one of my favorite aspects of any deck that's able to get full coverage game one. And I'm talking about like full, like, dude, you're not paying for liability. This is like full coverage insurance. I think that's insane. I think the fact that this deck is playing the Diabellstar cards is already in and of itself absurd, because that's a whole other layer that adds to your lines, that gives you a level of extension, recursion, follow-up, and just in general like better fodder to also push through more. And it's crazy. Like, it's crazy. Like, it doesn't matter if you're playing the Infernoble, if you're playing Jet Synchron, if you're playing Isold, if you're playing the aCe, if you're playing Therions and Spriggans. It doesn't matter if you're playing like the Cyberse good stuff, or if you're just like playing traditional rEsCuE. It's like if you can make Dweller, like half of your matchups are already free. Like if you're making like Baron Dweller, like you already won. Like this is more of like a streamlined, kind of pseudo streamlined looking extra deck down below. Like some of these cards are debatable. Like I think Anima's crazy. I think it's just hard not to play into Anima. So I think this is like a staple. Like a lot of these cards are pretty staple, right? Like this is not deck profile, but like you have all this utility. Like look at all these insane cards. Like you have the Charmers, Proxy F Magician is like a strong line, not only to get protection for your Turbulence, but to have an extra level 4 just so that you can be able to get easier access into Dweller and Banshee. IP and an SP, like the fact that the Diabellstars and the Charmers like allow you to get access to a card like Selene, which climbs in the access code more efficiently. The fact that you can make Zeus even crazier now, like in Sky Crisis, just being, it's just crazy. Like none of these cards are rEsCuE cards, but you get to play like 15 unique, diverse, and non-rEsCuE cards in your extra deck because the entire deck is solely based off its main deck, which leads to another strength that this deck doesn't really lose to D-Barrier. It does not lose to Dimensional Barrier. It does not lose to a lot of traditional cards. Like conventional means, I guess, would be like Draw a Lockbird. What else is there? Like you could play through Nib, you could play through Ash Imperm, low impacts very well. You can actually play Undershifter, which is absurd. I think it's just a little bit too much. I think the deck is just a little overtuned. Not because of like its cards being so good, but because of its type, its attributes, its levels, and then on top of that, the fact that it's able to literally do 4 or 5 different lines off of the same 1 or 2 cards. I think it's absurd. And the fact that like a lot of these lines really don't require much commitment outside of the extra deck is just such a high ceiling and such a like favorable advantage that a lot of decks just don't get, and you never get type locked with this deck. So yes, I think rEsCuE is really strong. I think you have some like really good in-engine disruptions. Like you have like rEsCuE, which can just literally just like, it's Shark Cannon. It's like this is kind of like a Sky Striker-esque feeling, like where all of your spells are better when you have 3 spells in grave. Like all your back rows are better when you have Hydrant up. And Hydrant in and of itself is like a broken card. Like he's a broken card. He's a broken card. Like your traps are so disgusting. Like Extinguish is kind of silly. Like this card is like, I pop you, but I prohibition you. You know what I mean? Like that's insane. Like, and the utility and like the ceiling off of Extinguish alone is kind of just ridiculous. Like, think of like using this on hand traps that put themselves onto the field. Like, think of like, imagine like popping Nib and saying like, I don't get nibbed. Imagine like the mirror match. Like, imagine just playing against Tearlaments. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these cards are crazy good. Contain is wow. Like, it literally says like, make the monster useless. I think these cards are broken. Reinforce. I almost took it out. You see how fast I almost took it out? I think the best effect is like the graveyard effect, which is Gucci. I don't know how I feel about it. I know it gives you like a way better grind game, but like I like it though. It's a cool card. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a cool card. So like we can go into more in like the boss monsters and like the main deck cards, because like I've talked about a lot of like the pretty much the full coverage and synopsis on the archetype, but like rEsCuE Ace Hydrant is a broken card, right? Like this is kind of like a custom card. It's not. It could have been a Rhoda in and of itself, and that would have been enough. And it's not like an on-summon Rhoda, which is even better. Like, you get so much value out of this card. It's an every turn Rhoda. It gets targeting protection, and it lets you activate quick plays and traps the same turn they're set at least once. And Airlifter, like, it's broken like the extra effects that all the rEsCuE Ace cards have. Like, Airlifter is a Rhoda for any spell. And then your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, which that's a gimmick. Some of them, like, some of the warriors do have, like, this ability to tribute themselves from hand or field when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field. And then they summon something from a point. So this guy summons a rEsCuE Ace monster from your hand, so that's extension. And it plays through disruptions. And also at the same time, like, so here's the other cool thing. Like, you know how it says, like, when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, quick effect? It doesn't say, like, you can only activate each of Airlifter's effects once per chain. So you could literally go, normal summon Airlifter, effect to add spell is a Gucci. And then, like, I chain, let's just say, you know, this is a dumb example, but I chain Sword Soul Chi-Xiao. I'm going to target your Airlifter and negate it, and you say, is that on field? I'm going to tribute my Airlifter, and I'm going to summon from hand. I just dodged your Chi-Xiao, and I also got my spell anyway, so I fully played through a disruption for no reason at all. Impulse, broken. This is Havness, basically. Think of this as Havness. Something else that's really cool that, like, people overlook, I don't ever see this used, is, like, right here. Let's get to it. Choose one effect monster your opponent controls at the highest attack. Neither player can activate that monster's effect on the field this turn. This is a going second card, by the way, in more ways than one. And it just summons any machine, so like the level restriction doesn't matter. It's just broken. Like, I think this card's just really, 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 really broken. Alright, so we'll go into like the last of the warriors, which is Monitor. This card does not get played at all. He does add a trap, so he's okay. He's not terrible. His other effect, which is similar to the other two, is like just to Monster Reborn. So like as a one-off, he could be good for the grind for recursion. The deck doesn't have the best grind game in the world, but like literally if you live to turn 3, you win anyway, so it doesn't matter that much. But it does grind pretty well. Preventer is like an in-archetype freaking Book of Moon and an extender, but also it's not just an extender, like it extends again. Because like it brings back one of your banished guys when it hits the grave. Can you ask me why it just has to be sent to the grave and not from the field? I don't know, bro. I really don't know. Maybe we're gonna get an Armageddon Knight. I don't know. Turbulence, we'll save him for last. Fire Tucker is pretty interesting because like this also is. It was a part of like impulse lines in the earlier format where like it was pretty good to like dig for hand traps if you didn't see them and start your turn with a free good body. It is an extender. It does chain block. because if you normal summon a special guy, like it does kind of act like a Kagato Kage, if that makes sense. So like you can go normal airlifter, chain link 1, chain link 2, fire attacker. The same thing with fire engine. Fire engine I think is a good card on pen and paper, but a lot of people don't like the card because it doesn't really do anything by itself, and your opponent has to be able to play for it to play. It is good if you want to commit more for impulse. Do I think it's super insane? It's a cool extender. I think it's like at worst a one of, at best just not played at all. And then we have like turbulence, and like turbulence secret effect to pop a card does come up quite often, and people just don't like. They always play into it. They just always play into it. It's freaking huge. It's 3,000, 3,000. It's super easy to summon. A lot of these cards have their own abilities to special themselves, but also don't ever say they cannot be normal summoned or set, which is broke. So you can get them off emergency, which is just insane. And this guy just says set 4 from your deck. Yeah, that's all he had to do. He didn't have to do anything else. That's all he had to do. You've got emergency, which is broken, and we're giving like a full synopsis on the archetype. Emergency it's just crazy. It plays through so much. It's a starter and a defensive card at one, all in one, and then also just like the bonus effect to get your trap backs for no reason. Infinite grind game. Why do we need to normal summon twice? I don't know. Why do we need to draw one every turn? I don't know. Why do we never run out of resources? I don't know. Shark Cannon? I don't know why. Another Rhoda? I don't know why, because we always have ace. So you kind of understand, like, the deck in and of itself like has a good value engine, and it doesn't really have any bad cards. It just has cards that require more of a commitment in the terms of the composition of your main deck building. So like it has cards that are good if you play the proper cards to kind of insulate the chance of bricking, but also like you do get a higher ceiling out of it. It's just you have to commit more in your main deck. But why do that when you can play like 18 non-engine, right? And so then your ceiling would be higher regardless, because like your non-engine would give you coverage that like this deck can't get. So I think it's good. I think its weaknesses do get covered by the extra deck and the supplemental engines, so it doesn't really have very many weaknesses. I know it's not that great against Droll, but like there's so many plays you can make after you get Drolled, because like some of your most integral searches are literally your first search. So yeah, I just think this archetype's bonkers. I think that there's unexploited territory with like the Spriggans cards and like Merrymaker and bricks, Merrymaker and friends, and like all the bricks and like Therions, which these are not actually bricks, because like as long as you have a name engraved, they work. They just kind of make your combos a little convoluted because you need an exact certain amount for turbulence and also for preventers. So like if you're not able to get enough fodder engraved, like you either have to pick between Therion or one of your big guys, and you don't like that. That's why I feel like that's probably the #1 reason why Therions aren't played. I don't think they're bad cards. I do see the potential of them being played. Because they're machines, you have access to like Cleave for Genius and all the machine support, and I just think this deck's broken. I really do. So yeah, you guys, those are all the reasons of why I think rEsCuE aCe is like literally probably the best deck right now. It has very few weaknesses. It has coverage for every matchup. Post-sighting, it gets even crazier. And I think it's solid going first, solid going second. It's very consistent. It has enough firepower. It can close games out pretty fast. And it doesn't really take long to determine whether or not you're going to win as soon as you go up against this deck. So yeah, you guys, and it also has been taking events by storm. It has dominated the entire format, where Pearly, Unchained, Vanadium, and rEsCuE aCe, and I would say Chimera and branded variants are kind of like the best decks alongside Labyrinth. It's a super, super random wildcard format, because there's quite a few other archetypes that still have yet to like showcase their full potential, but we'll see when it gets there. God bless you, make good choices, don't hurt your brain cells, stay tuned for future content. Peace.